across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And of course, at midnight, it is your chance to talk back. It's the only hour on the station where you get the chance to have your say, your stories and your opinions and your views. So what are we talking about at midnight? It's got to be the BBC, hasn't it? Because it is in a crisis. But is it a crisis of its own making? We'll be discussing that in just a moment with my guest. But I want to hear from you at midnight because I want to know, do you still trust the BBC? Because trust is the most important thing about the BBC and about the news that it delivers. It is supposed to be the most trustworthy news organisation in the world. That certainly was its reputation. Has Panorama destroyed that? Have there been other issues with the BBC that have made you, let's say, less than willing to part with £180 for your TV licence? Do you think the BBC can survive this? And furthermore, do you think it should survive this? Look, we know the media landscape is changing. It's completely different now. We all pay subscriptions, don't we, for different TV, different streaming organisations. We might even get our news, not from the television or even from the radio, but we might get it from online sources. Some people might even get it from TikTok or from X, although why you would baffles me. So who do you trust when it comes to news? Who do you turn to? Say there was a big thing happened. Let's say a terror attack. Where would you turn to first? Where would you go to first for your news that you would trust 100%? Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you on this because that is the big thing about the BBC. It is its unique selling point that you can trust it. Do you? 0344 499 1000. That's the number you're going to need to give me a call. You can also text the word talk and your message to 87222. Now, as you know, I did work at the BBC for about 5 years, 4.5 to 5 years. I've never really sung its praises from the experience that I had when I was at the BBC. But like I said, I was only there for a short while. But my guest who joins me now is Petrie Hosken. Now, yes, you do recognise the name because, in fairness and in clarity, he is my brother. But you're not here because you're my brother. You're here because you're a former BBC senior correspondent and an author. You were with the BBC for how long? Oh,
just over 30 years.
30,
more than 30 years, yeah.
30 years.
Yeah.
And you left in about 2020?
I left in 2020 of my own volition. Up until that time, I was working mainly for Radio 4 programmes such as the Today programme and The World Tonight. And then the BBC decided to basically get those reporters off those programmes and into the newsroom, which I thought was a mistake and still do, because I think those programmes needed their own teams and to make their own editorial decisions. So it was something I didn't think was a great thing to do, and so I left.
And at that time, there was a lot of experience such as yours, right? 30 years of experience in news, that left pretty much at the same time, right? Yeah. Over a period of, let's say, 2 or 3 years anyway. It cleared out all you old blokes.
not all of us.
Not all of you, but a good deal of people felt the same way you felt about being in a general pool of reporters rather than dedicated to a programme.
Yeah, I mean, I think replenishing editorial teams is important and good, to bring in new people and to get people, you know, moving on if they're not adding much to the party or a bit tired or a bit all the rest of it. I think the rate that it was done, I think, depleted the BBC. I think it threw away a lot of really good, experienced people. I think if you talk to anybody at the BBC, they'll agree with that. And unfortunately, you know, there is a clump of managers at the BBC who I don't think, you know, are as good as the managers that I can remember being at the BBC 20 or so years ago, and a lot of us thought they were making very poor decisions, not only about the coverage of certain stories, but also about the direction of the BBC, the direction of BBC News, and the sorts of people that it wanted to get rid of and retain.
Can I just ask you something? I mean, I know the answer to it, but I do need to ask this question because there's been a lot of talk about institutional bias. Were you, in your 30 years, ever told to write a story or produce a story to a certain editorial decision?
No, never.
No.
It would not happen. I mean, I worked with people for decades. I never knew how they voted.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that someone would say, well, I want you to do a story a particular way, would be an anathema. It would never happen. I mean, I think people talk about the bias. I mean, they're talking about sort of 20-odd thousand people with different views on the world. But when you come into the BBC, virtually everybody I knew would set those personal opinions and views aside and just concentrate on the job at hand. I mean, it's a bit like sort of being a doctor and taking an opinion about whether you like the patient or not, or a solicitor deciding whether or not they like the people they're representing. You just sort of, you would go nuts if you decided to be biased about every story that you covered. It would be impossible, and people would soon pick up on it. There's another question about cultural bias, perhaps.
Yeah, groupthink.
Yeah, well, groupthink. I think preponderance of sort of middle-class people, public school, university-educated people, particularly in London, you know, they may be a preponderance of those people there, and they will bring along with them perhaps metropolitan biases on certain things. I think I mean, they a lot of them, you know, are very, very professional people, and I'm not saying that at all. But I mean, that would be a fair criticism, I think, of the BBC.
So
I don't know how you
who
get
they're
around
hiring.
that.
Yeah, because I mean, I remember falling out with somebody at a drinks party who insisted that as a BBC presenter, I would be being told what to say, and I never, not on this channel, not on LBC, not on the BBC, or even here. And everybody who knows this channel knows that I am completely different to everybody else on this channel.
Yeah.
Nobody has told me what to say, how to think, or what opinions to have.
Yeah.
And even those years as a presenter on the BBC, not once was I told you must have this bias. And nobody believes that, and that's why I needed to ask you that question, because there is a lot of people today calling out the BBC for institutional bias, which means from the top down you are told what to say and how to write a story.
That isn't the case. I mean, the thing is about the BBC is it's a very complex organisation, perhaps too complicated. I mean, I feel sorry for the Director General of the BBC because they have this other title, which is Editor-in-Chief. You're also Editor-in-Chief of the BBC, and you have a huge amounts of different bulletins, news programmes, documentaries, all the rest of it happening all the time. On top of that, you've now got podcasts and social media and all the rest of it. And it's one hell of a job for any individual to take on. And if you look at the history of the BBC, you know, we've had 4 DGs, Director Generals, being forced to resign, in one case being fired, in the case of Alistair Milne back in 1987, in the last 40 years. That's half the Director Generals. You know, we had...
Tony Hall?
No, Tony Hall didn't, but of course Greg Dyke had to resign in 2004 over the WMD story, that the Today programme, which I was a member of at the time. My colleague Andrew Gilligan did that story.
Yeah, I remember that.
It perhaps wasn't the best cover, so I think the judge said he wasn't the greatest historian he'd ever come across. But the way that was handled, the mishandling of that by the BBC management, led to both Greg Dyke and Gavin Davies, who was then the chairman of the board, resigning. And then we go forward, 2012, we had George Entwistle being forced to resign over a terrible piece of journalism connected to Laura McAlpine, who was accused essentially of being a paedophile. George Entwistle fell on his sword after 54 days in the job. And now, fast forward to 2025, we've got the 4th DG in 40 years resigning, Tim Davie, over this sloppy piece of journalism, which is the only way I can describe it. I mean, the idea that you have to splice together 2 bits of Donald Trump to make him say something interesting, I find absurd and extraordinary. I mean, the man, whatever criticisms you may make of him, good copy he is, and the idea that the
You
way
have to
that was
fake
put.
good coffee.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can defend it in a particular way, I suppose. You could say, well, you know, he certainly wasn't, you know, the way he contested the election and what happened on January the 6th was terrible and an indictment of him. But the fact is, he did not say what was suggested, and that is sloppy reporting. I don't think it was done malevolently. I just think it's incompetence. And if you look at
It was done by an external organisation as well, wasn't it? It was October Films, because a lot of people are sending messages saying, well, why didn't the whole Panorama team get sacked? Why didn't blah, blah, blah? But this was an external organisation that the BBCers want to do, to hand out work to it. They have to.
Well, they do, yes, because the governments in the past have said, look, you must put out tender a certain percentage of your programmes. I mean, Petrie, this reminds you a bit of the scandal back in 2007, where an independent company, along with the consent of it would seem of the controller of BBC One at the time, misrepresented the Queen. You remember this? Anne Leibovitz was in 2007. Was
the photographer.
a photo call, yes, with a photo call with the Queen, and the trail looked like the Queen was storming out in a huff out of this photo session. When actually what had happened was they reversed it. She was actually walking in to the photo session in actually a very good mood, cracking jokes. Yeah. Now that was a lamentable piece of editorial decision making, and it was rightly punished. The controller resigned, the external production company boss resigned, and rightly so. And here again we see incompetence compounded by stupidity, compounded by arrogance and cover up, and the
arrogance and cover up comes from the top.
Culminating resignation. Yeah. Yes, in this case palpably so. I mean, they knew. I mean,
look at the Hugh Edwards scandal as well, right?
Yes.
I mean, the whole thing. It's embarrassing to look at. The BBC cannot handle a crisis. It just never has been able to. You've got Jimmy Savile going way back.
Well, that was terrible.
But the Hugh Edwards thing.
Yes.
What an absolute fiasco. I was surprised that Tim Davie didn't have to go over that when he gave him that cheque for 200 grand or whatever and then asked for the money back.
I mean, there is, you're right. I mean, I think the criticism that can be levelled at the BBC, and I think because there's so many managers, I mean,
the clipboard Johnnies, as I called them.
Well, I mean, you know, I was slightly amused by the resignation of Deborah Turness, who was the chief executive officer. I mean, in my day, we didn't have a chief executive officer news, so there wouldn't have been one to resign at the same day the director general resigned. So, but there are lots of managers with lots of titles. They're constantly being reshuffled all the time. I mean, there's the old joke of, you know, the BBC, oh, this is terrible, deputy heads must roll. But, I mean, now it's actual heads are rolling, and they've been rolling for quite a bit. I think a lot of deputy heads haven't been rolling, but perhaps they should have been, and will probably still be around for the next crisis. But, you know, this is a story not of institutional bias as such, although I know there was this memo that was leaked to the Telegraph in which an external advisor made very valid criticisms. Michael Prescott made and I read the memo that he wrote to the Editorial Guidelines and Standards Board, which is a sort of internal BBC board that sort of monitors BBC standards. And I think reading through that, I thought he made some very valid criticisms. I'm not qualified or experienced enough to know whether or not his criticisms, say, of the BBC Arabic are well-founded. I don't speak Arabic, I don't watch or listen to their output. But on the other aspects that he raised, particularly about the Trump thing and other aspects of the way that was covered, the Trump campaign, the race for the White House in 2024, there are aspects of that that gave me concern as well as a journalist. And it sounds to me that the frustration that led to this document being leaked, which has precipitated this crisis for the BBC, was born through the frustrations that he probably felt about his complaints not being addressed. And were obviously valid criticisms because it's been admitted as such now. And
if they'd just dealt with it at the time, perhaps this crisis could have been avoided. But look, let's talk about the BBC culture. There's an awful lot said about BBC culture as well. And I think that one of the problems with the BBC is that to the outside world, it is like Harry Potter world. Right, I don't think people understand.
If only it was that fun.
If only it was that fun. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, when I joined the BBC, I had to do various online courses, and one of them was how to walk through a revolving door. Jen, did you have to do that one? Or did they trust that you could do that?
Well, the BBC is. I think the BBC is fantastic about the way that it looks after its staff. I mean, so for example,
well, they didn't look after me during COVID. They were shocking.
Well, I mean, in terms of I when I went to war zones and so on for the BBC, which I did, now and then. I every 2 years I would do a hostile environments course. A great expense. I would first day what would do with the car blew up or there's someone shot or whatever. They teach you this stuff. They teach you about health and safety, about how to work with children.
Very important.
Very, very important. So these aspects they are very, very good on. I wouldn't knock them on that at all. I mean, probably from the outside, people think it's too fussy and woke and all the rest of it. But actually, a lot of this. I mean, if you look at the safety aspect of it, I mean, a friend of mine, John Schofield, lost his life in Bosnia in 1995, and then we lost another member of staff, Kate Payton, a few years later in Mogadishu. We haven't really lost anyone since then. The BBC does look after its people, and increasingly, I think the problem with the BBC, it's now in this very polarised world, media-wise as well. It's a shuttlecock for all of these rather, I think, tedious culture wars that are waged between right and left. I mean, you can almost predict what people say about the BBC when anything happens. That's not to sort of excuse what's happening now. It's just an observation on my part that you just see the BBC being kicked around because it's easy to kick around.
Well, it's like a lot of the big institutions, isn't it, that get kicked around.
A lot of institutions are being attacked at the moment, whether it's a national trust or whether it's the BBC, but unfortunately, it's this sort of managerial, editorial incompetence and stupidity that we've seen over the last week or so,
like you said,
that actually sort of opens the door to this sort of, criticism.
But it is based in arrogance. It's always based in
It's also
arrogance.
based in fear of managers thinking, oh, what if this gets out? What if we say sorry, that will only make the Daily Mail or the Daily Telegraph, blah, blah, blah. And I remember the terror that you would go through the BBC every Friday because the Daily Mail has submitted a data subject access or freedom of information request to the BBC management about what taxis were being commissioned by
how many
presenters.
biscuits are bought.
I mean, actually, one of the biggest things I thought was the £1 million a year being spent on newspapers, which they should be happy about, so that everyone can read what's happening in the world. But I suppose there's a bit of cultural thing. I mean, a lot of people, they travel from broadcasting house to the Tube and go home. The producers. I mean, as a reporter, I was very fortunate and privileged to go out to the world, talk to people, see how
which
people
does change your view.
see how around Britain, around the world, to war zones, to investigations and all the rest of it, all those sorts of stories. So you get an understanding of what goes on in people's lives.
I could definitely, if I was in a bar, be able to point out who the BBC producers are, because they are cookie cutter. They all look. They do. I mean, there's a certain age, there's a certain look, there's a certain... I've spent quite a lot of time at the BBC in the newsroom, and certainly during COVID there was only the reporters and me in the building because all the clipboard Johnnies were at home coming up with new ways to torture us with one-way systems and things around COVID. And that maybe is the problem, that a lot of people say, oh, they're so woke, there's too much DEI. And actually there's not enough DEI. There's not enough diversity, I don't think. They're very good with colour diversity. They're very good with disability diversity. Those are the two forms of diversity that I saw. But I didn't see working class people. I didn't see a lot of people that might have a different view. And that I do think leads to that unintentional bias.
That I think that's probably fair criticism. As I say, I'm not a spokesman for the BBC. I'm giving my personal observations, and I think that's probably right. I think that there is a lack of class diversity. I would say, obviously, particularly in news. I think that's a fair criticism.
Well, and educational diversity, because they're saying everybody's got to have a degree. I don't have a degree. I worked for the BBC. I know that you do, but I didn't. So you don't need. The things that they ask for when you apply for a job need to be gone.
Yeah, well, I mean,
there are some good people who didn't go to private school.
I came up through newspapers, so I started off in weekly newspapers. I went to an evening paper, then I think it came through regional television, in a BBC regional television, and I think there's probably not enough journalists at the BBC who have had outside journalistic experience at the BBC. Probably too many journalists at the BBC whose only experience of journalism has been the BBC. Yeah, you get people joining as junior producers and then they become editors.
And if they're rubbish, they become management.
Well, no, actually, a lot of them are really, really good. I mean, a lot of them are really good. I think there are certain people in key parts of the management in the BBC who aren't and have been there too long, and I'm not going to say who they are because it's my own personal opinion. And it's probably not.
Maybe over a drink later.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, but I mean, there is something cultural that's gone wrong at the I think at the BBC editorially, and I think that's being recognised. And I think it's interesting that it took an external journalist, Michael Prescott, to point out things which were very uncomfortable for the BBC.
Can the BBC survive?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
In its current form?
Well, no, the BBC needs to evolve and change, and of course it will be. But I think that, people say get rid of the BBC. Well, okay, well then get rid of Test Match Special and EastEnders and the great drama.
Celebrity
and all the rest
Traitors.
Celebrity Traitors, yeah, and all Monty Python back in the day and all the rest.
Yeah.
All the great, wonderful things the BBC do, the great it's a massive cultural asset that would be nuts to get rid of. It's absolutely fantastic in what it does, I think. I mean, I would pay for Radio 4 for the licence fee alone. And when you see, okay, so what do you get for 180 quid? I mean, well, look at what people are paying for YouTube for a Premier service or Netflix. And they just, I mean, I'm not knocking that at all.
But a lot of people with the licence entry will say that it's a choice.
Yeah.
What I don't agree with the licence is that you can't watch any live telly. I think the licence should just be about the BBC. And if you choose, I use the BBC, I use the iPlayer, I listen to the radio, and I use the news services, right? So I think I should pay, right? It's not a case of me trying to dodge that responsibility. No. But a lot of people say, well, I don't, I watch live sport on something else. Why am I paying the BBC the licence fee?
Look,
so I think they've got to change the licence fee, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I think you talk to anyone at the BBC, everyone thinks the licence fee is an antiquated form of paying for the BBC. It's a question of how you pay for it. I mean, for example, the World Service, which I think was a fantastic. Has been a fantastic. Yeah. It's not what it was, and I think that was a mistake. Personally, I think that was a great soft power for Britain, and also brilliant for the people around the world that could see what Britain stood for through the World Service, and had fantastic people working for it. That was funded by the Foreign Office directly at the time. So how you fund the BBC, I don't know. Cleverer people than me will have to think that one out. But I think obviously it does need to be looked at. I think how you do that, I don't know. But obviously it'll have to be funded in some way.
Yeah.
If we want to maintain this fantastic cultural institution. But I think, a long, hard look has to be looked at the way it's doing its news and the people who are managing the news.
Would you go back?
Because, well, they wouldn't ask me.
They might Director General's job's going.
No, I think, no, I'm not, no.
That'd be quite good. I could slip back in through nepotism.
Well, why not?
Why not?
No, I wouldn't. Thank you. I'm enjoying my life too much as it is. But no, I think there are things that need to be looked. I mean, we need somebody to go. I still think, but you sort of need a really
not have that chip removed yet.
No, not quite. But the BBC needs a really good sort of editor to go in there and sort the place out and just get people. I don't know who that person would be. I mean, it's we've had some excellent DGs. I mean, I thought Greg Dyke was great, but unfortunately, he was a part of a faulty decision-making process, and in the end he went. But he sort of embodied the right kind of spirit of somebody who sort of, had the right kind of motivation. I thought, I don't know if you could get someone like that who also has.
It'll be a woman next.
Editorial rigour.
I'm telling you, the BBC will go for a woman.
Well, why not?
Why not? And it could be me. If it's not you, it's me. No. Andrew, honestly, I love that. That was really great. great. So thank you.
You're biased.
I am biased.
You're institutionally biased.
I'm biased because you're my big brother.
Right.
And this is, I'm loving this interview Petrie is having with her brother as she declared her interest. There is no bias. And she's allowing him to speak while also challenging and raising points her fellow leftists would never acknowledge related to a lack of diversity of thought and class. So there you go.
Okay.
It's a compliment. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. I will see you very soon.
Pleasure. Okay,
No doubt.
thank you very much. Yes, we'll do.
Okay. He's going to come back and do some papers for us as well. I'm going to take a very quick break, and then Ed Wiseman, the man that is wise, will be here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, of course, is the phone in. And I want to hear from you about the BBC. Do you still trust the BBC? If something big were to happen, where would you turn for your news? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Well, after all the years I've known my brother, I've never been in a studio with him before, which, unlike Ed Wiseman, we've been in studios plenty of times.
Every other week.
Every other week we're in the studio together.
It's remarkable.
That was weird, though, interviewing my brother.
You did. You worked very well. It was good.
Strange.
You have a good in-studio energy.
Yeah.
I think
we should double up.
The new Anton Deck,
The
potentially.
new Anton Deck. Oldie and older.
And I can say that as I know he's leaving the building. I probably won't hear it unless it's playing in the lift. But comes storming back upstairs. No, it was good.
But it was interesting what he was saying about the BBC. 30 years he was there, so he knows about all of the stuff that has gone on there. And he's saying that this is appalling, this level of journalism, but he doesn't think it will kill the BBC. What do you think about?
No, I don't think it will either. They've had their fair share of scandals.
But this is about trust.
It is, but then all of the scandals have been about trust to some extent,
degree,
whether it's, Jimmy Savile or the WMDs. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that happening because that was on the programme Andrew was working on at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's that,
Andrew Gilligan, who became the cycling czar for the mayor.
It's the whole thing. It's all. I mean, never mind the whole revolving door that is British civic life. I think that that was obviously
a terrible.
It had a huge impact.
That was true.
Hugh
Edwards as well. That was a massive
Hugh Edwards as well,
scandal.
but Hugh Edwards was a drop in the ocean compared to WMD and the Queen and those kinds of stories, like your brother was saying. There have been some real howlers over the years. Yeah. And the DG has to step down every 10 years, give or take. Yeah. How long ago was Greg Dyke?
Yeah, years ago.
It was, but I mean, this happens a lot.
Yeah, it does happen a lot.
Every time everybody...
But Tim Davie, I think, I've been saying for ages, I don't know how he's survived so long, because he has been, he was there overseeing the whole Bob Villan thing.
They're minor, it's cumulative. I think that's the thing.
It's cumulative.
There's no huge clangor.
Strictly come bullying.
Strictly.
Hugh.
What's his face with the big salary on Match of the Day?
Gary Lineker.
Gary Lineker. Yeah, there have been lots of sort of moderately aggravating ones, and it just all built up.
Yeah.
But none of them in isolation are as big as Savile, or actually, I mean, I suppose Savile's kind of quite late in the day. But but compared with some of the other real political howlers.
Yeah, I don't think he could have.
Small ones.
A lot of people are suggesting that he should have actually stayed. Not least the chairman said that he tried to encourage him to stay.
But then would you, or would you just look at read the runes and think, you know what, I'm out. I'm going to take my whatever his...
I'm going to fall on the... It'd be a massive payoff.
A massive payoff, or even if it's just a moderate payoff, you just don't have to deal with it anymore, which
He'll
must
end
be
up being
compelling.
head of another TV network.
Yeah,
in
or
a
like
year's
something
time.
else. It'll go and work for the Ministry of whatever, what do they call it? The Department of Culture and Sport and stuff like that. Like a really nice pension. It'll be fine. He'll be fine. I don't think it's necessarily the... I don't know. His resignation is a bit of a weird one.
Do you think?
There were people further down the chain that maybe should be considering their tenure more.
Yeah. I mean, I just wonder if when you're dealing with news and when you're dealing with current affairs, whether that should ever be put out to tender. That the BBC should keep news and current affairs, put out to tender Strictly and Traitors and, all of those other things that don't matter, that the veracity of it doesn't matter as much.
Or at least where the expertise is external. There are people who are very good at putting together programmes like The Traitors. Yeah. There's no necessary point in having that in-house.
No.
But news is what is the BBC's
news and current affairs.
That should be absolutely baked in. And but this is the problem I think that's happening all over the media, and I've worked in other places as well. The contentification of everything. It's about sort of bums on seats. It's about just churning out the output, making sure that targets are being met, while also spending less and less money. So of course you outsource it. But this is the British curse. We outsource everything. We have no expertise left in the public sector or in anything that matters.
But letting Andrew go and the swathe of other, people who've been at the BBC, who, like you say, he's still got the chip in his brain. He's still,
absolutely. And
you snap him in half and it'll say BBC after 30 years. So they got rid of a lot of really specialised, intelligent,
experienced, very expensive to pay every year,
very expensive people.
And you can do 80% of the same job by paying a grad who is obviously nowhere near as good, but 9 times out of 10 they produce something that is passable. They do that at every single newspaper. They get people to churn it out because the difference. And
nobody's investigating news anymore either. I mean, Andrew used to investigate. There's no investigative stuff because that's expensive.
I'm sure there's some. But
it's expensive. A lot of it is just rip and read. Taking it from a PA or rewriting it and sticking it on the. It doesn't feel like there's anything fresh there. So. You think the BBC will survive this?
Absolutely, yeah.
You're happy to still pay your TV licence?
I think so, yes. Partly because I've worked in other places and I think the BBC is still the absolute gold standard. I've never worked anywhere that pays as much attention. I mean, I've worked for places that do the kind of stuff that they've been called out on today, like every other week, and they wouldn't.
But we let you get away with a load.
Exactly.
No one else would.
No, I say all sorts of stuff in here. Nobody cares. No, but you know what I mean. I'm sure that you have looked around other places in this building and looked around at other places that I have worked.
Well, I worked at the BBC and I wasn't impressed with the way that they. When I was broadcasting across the country, so my early breakfast show covered Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England, the whole country, so that other people didn't have to go into studios. Not one email saying thank you for that, taking into account the kind of stories I was getting from around the country of people, a blind man phoned and said, I'm blind, I don't know how to get food, I'm starving. I then had to get my team to try and find out where he was, stay on the line and get somebody to help him. I was dealing with crises like that every single day, not one phone call, not one email saying, are you all right?
Yeah. Or do you need some support?
Do you need some support? Yeah. Is everything okay?
But in terms of bias,
there was no bias.
You were never coerced into saying or not saying something.
Never. I never have been in any place, and I wouldn't allow it. I said to my boss when he hired me here, know who you're hiring. I will never change. So if you don't want me, then hire somebody else. And he said, no, that's what we want. So I've never been told on this station, on LBC or BBC or anywhere else that I've worked, what I can and can't say.
I think you'll find that a lot of people certainly have, certainly at newspapers, it happens almost every day. Especially the overtly partisan ones.
Well, the overtly partisan ones,
But then what isn't overtly partisan at the moment, apart from the Beeb? Like, name a paper, name a big media company that isn't overtly partisan.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that lots of people will be shouting at their radios now, saying, obviously the BBC is partisan against me.
Well, it's interesting because it gets accused of being too far to the right, because it's had a lot of reform, and too far to the left. And I've always been accused of, funnily enough, not here, but everywhere I've been, oh, you're a lefty, oh, you're a right wing. Yeah. So when that happens, I know I'm
you absolutely,
in the middle.
Yeah, you have to, as long as you have an equal amount of hate from both camps.
Hate from both camps.
You're fine, I think.
Fine.
And that's a really good
bellwether. Although I'm still called a lefty here, which I'm not.
Do you count as a lefty here? Because it also depends where you are. You'd be a lefty at the Telegraph as well.
I'd be a lefty at the Telegraph as well, but I'm very much in the centre.
Staunch Conservative at the Observer, for example.
Exactly. Yeah, depends where you are.
It depends where you are. It depends who's listening.
Yeah. Well, I'm a lefty, according to Jay. But it still doesn't stop me from asking unbiased questions.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to take a quick break, and Ed and I will be back to go through those papers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Petrie with you, and with me is the fabulous Ed Wiseman, and anybody who's watching will know that he has returned to the porn moustache.
I have.
It's nice,
It's November.
Yeah.
And so here I am.
And you've grown that in 2 weeks. I'm very impressed.
What I
did... Is it a stick-on?
No, sadly not. I can't peel it off. I think this is an interesting philosophical question. Often I'll have quite a bit of a beard, partly because I'm careless with my appearance and partly because I just don't really like shaving that much. So there is a moustache there a lot of the time. So yeah, yesterday I had a sort of beardy moustachey thing going on, and it was only when I shaved it off that it took its true form. So yeah, it took me about a fortnight to grow out and then I sort of...
It needs to be a little bit longer to fulfil the porn
I think
image.
That seems to be the consensus
among
other people. It needs to be, but you can't go full goatee. It just doesn't suit.
No, just grow these side bits.
Yeah. But then when I'm wearing a sort of suit jacket, it's just a bit confusing.
Well, I think that's the whole point.
It really throws people off. In quite a sensual way.
I'm very impressed.
Okay, thank you.
That's
the main.
A little bit longer, and I'll be
keep
happy.
Going. I'll keep eating my calcium.
Yeah, exactly. Right, let's look at the papers. The Sun newspaper, Beeb's $1 billion bungle. I didn't even get a chance to talk to Andrew about this, but Trump's $1 billion lawsuit threat over lies. Now, we know he likes to sue the press. He has sued pretty much every press organisation in the United States of America.
Yeah.
If he were to go for this, that would be the licence fee of about 4.5 million people.
Okay, that's. Have you done that mathematics, or did you just?
No, somebody else did.
Okay, I was going to say that's impressive. If so,
it would have been impressive.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think they probably will apologise anyway. And I think $1 billion is just the biggest number that he can think of. And what are you going to?
Well, this is what's difficult. First of all, he's filed this lawsuit in Florida.
Right.
Because he couldn't file it in the UK because you have to do it within a year of broadcast, and he's missed the year of broadcast. Yeah. And in Florida, of course, they have very high freedom of speech bar. Mm-hmm. Now, there is no doubt that what happened in that Panorama programme was disgusting. Yeah. It was poor journalism. It was bad. It was wrong, and it was just shocking. But he would have to prove, in a defamation lawsuit, you have to prove that it has done you substantial harm.
Yes.
And he's since then won an election to become president. So I think it would be quite hard for him to prove that it had done him harm. He's also got to prove that it was seen in Florida and by how many people. Yeah. So, I mean, look, we know he's going to get some payoff out of this because the BBC won't allow it to go to court, but he'll probably get about 15 million. But that's not a sign of, yes, the BBC did wrong. He's not suing them for doing wrong. He's suing them for defamation. And that is very, very different.
I don't know anything about Floridian defamation law. Does it resemble our own? Is there a different...
It is similar.
So there's defamation, is there malicious falsehood? So do they have to prove
But you have to prove that it doesn't matter that the BBC did. Right, for example, what happened to me was I had the disgusting Anjem Chowdhury on a programme that I was doing. And because I caught him out in a lie, he then turned around to me and said, "You're a prostitute and a paedophile." And when I was an undergraduate, and my line, best line I've ever delivered in my life was, "Mr. Chowdhury, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something, I was never an undergraduate," which I think is genius, right? Which disproves everything that he said, because I was never an undergraduate. So, and I went to see lawyers and I said, "Can I sue him?" He said it live on radio. It was complete defamation. And the lawyer said, "It doesn't matter that he said it. It matters if it has damaged you. Did you lose your job? No. Have you been attacked in the street? No. Has anybody..." Because nobody believed him. Then there is no defamation case.
What's the wording
so
in
it
the
doesn't
UK?
Matter that he said it.
You lower them in the minds of right-thinking people.
That's the line.
It's been a long time since I've done the mandatory questionnaire that you have to do every couple of years to make sure you're up to date with it. But I don't think he could argue under English law, which might be very different to Florida, that his reputation has been significantly damaged by that. Yeah,
and it's very similar in Florida.
Because you have to be of a certain... It's your standing is taken into account.
It is your standing that's taken into account. So because nobody believed what was... I mean, I was like, obviously really upset by this and said, "I want to sue him." And they said, "Well, first of all, you've got to deposit 300 grand and he will get, because he was on benefits, he will get all his legal fees paid for. And you have to prove damage was done to your reputation. If you can't prove that, he wins. Even though there's a recording of him saying it, so it's not that it was done, it's if you can prove damage. So that's interesting to me about this particular case.
I reckon it won't go anywhere.
I think he'll get a payoff.
Do you think he'll get a payoff?
Yeah, I think he'll get a payoff.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell. I feel as though if it was in England, he wouldn't.
Yeah, well, the legal letter that was sent from Donald Trump said that he suffered overwhelming harm.
Which isn't really true.
Which, considering he was then voted president...
I don't know. Difficult. I feel as though that will be a tough one.
I think it'll be a tough one.
And that's obviously what every single newspaper...
But it doesn't detract from the fact the BBC... That was completely out of line.
Yeah, I wonder who did it. I wonder what level of seniority.
Well, it was an external company.
Exactly. But was it?
But it must have had oversight from an editor.
And this is the problem. It often doesn't. There are so many corners being cut everywhere in the media because the emphasis is on just getting stuff out there, volume, and so inevitably something will fall through the cracks. It's incredible that an organisation as big as the BBC, very little does. And those guys are churning stuff out day in, day out. Including, I mean, you can probably name a dozen things that the BBC are doing at the moment, but they're doing like hundreds of obscure podcasts, random true crime things, dramas, dramatisations, the proms, everything.
Yeah,
There's
everything,
so much
all
going
the
on.
radio stuff, it's extraordinary.
And with everybody pouring over them, trying to find a chink in the armour, trying to find something that they can drive a wedge into, that's what they found.
Yeah.
It's still not bad when you look at the whole picture. I think it's still an order of magnitude more trustworthy than anywhere that I've written for.
Yeah,
let alone.
I mean, maybe,
but it still needs to be better.
But it needs to be better, and this kind of thing is it's devastating, I think, and it would be devastating for the journalists who work very hard there.
That's the other problem, is that there are lots of people like your brother and like a lot of people who work incredibly hard and are very fair and put their own personal biases and presuppositions to one side, and all it takes is one person to not quite lower the tone, but to slightly undermine.
Yeah, well, and also to this idea of institutional bias. Like I said, I had this horrible woman having a go at me at a party, go, "You're told what to say, don't you?"
Exactly.
That's never,
that's not how it works.
It's not how it works.
But your brother made a very interesting point about the sort of indirect institutional bias of the fact that the corporation is based in London, and therefore you get a lot of the same kind of people who can afford.
And they've all got to have degrees to get a job.
You've always got
there.
to have degrees, and to have a degree, you're much more likely to be posh, white, middle class, stuff like that. I mean, I've benefited from that enormously in my media career because I'm fundamentally mediocre, but because I sound the way that I do and I own a blazer, I'm already 3/4 of the way through the application.
That's true.
And so I bumble into the office with lots of other blokes just like me. Hello, which part of the home counties did you come from?
Yeah.
And we're all there in whichever newspaper I've worked for, and broadcasting is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It becomes a bit of a feedback.
It does
loop
need
of
to
a certain
change.
type
It
of
does
person.
need to open up.
But that opens up a whole can of worms. That's about wages. That's about getting people into the media. That's about funding of degrees. That's about how much we care about diversity in these places.
It was a shock to any of my team at the BBC when they found out I didn't have a degree. They were like,
"Yeah, it's appalling."
What?
They start speaking louder and slower.
They started drawing pictures instead of putting words.
Oh, poor thing. She doesn't know.
She's a bit thick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was quite proud of it. I was like, "Whoa, yeah."
Yeah, you overcame the odds.
Yeah, overcame the odds, man.
But that's kind of part of the problem. It's the profession.
It is massively a problem.
It's affecting the whole profession. I think the BBC is dealing with it relatively well, and that they at least have some people who aren't from exactly the same background, and they try to open offices in Manchester.
Yeah,
and Cardiff,
that is
and
true.
other places.
That is true.
They
got a message here saying, "Wow, Ed Wiseman with that moustache." Guess who that's from?
Is that Gary?
It's Gary.
Gary in Glasgow.
Gary in Glasgow.
Fabulous. Hi, Gary.
He loves your moustache. Right, let's have a look at the Times. BBC told to say sorry or Trump will sue for $1 billion. That's Reeves hints at lifting 2-child benefit cap. We know that's coming.
That's going to be a disaster, isn't it? The budget is going to be a fiasco.
Yeah.
That's going to be a real shocker.
It is going to be a real shocker, because a lot of people will say, you should. What was the line I saw the other day? Not that I believe this of people. It's like, reward the workers, not the shirkers.
Yeah.
So if she's seen to increase the benefit bill,
that's going to be,
and take taxes away from working people, that would be extremely unpopular.
But then everything's going to be unpopular. I don't think there's a winning move to play. And as a motoring guy, I think my inbox is going to be busy if there is, as is slated, mileage tax, which would mean.
What do you make of that? A pay per mile? Because it just proves that taxation is a lie to me.
Okay, go on. That's a bold.
Because you're told that you're taxed for a reason, right? We pay tax to make sure that the NHS is blah blah, and the roads are XYZ and da 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 da. Why are we paying tax on something that is supposed to help the environment? How is she going to sell that?
Because
except for saying we've run out of money.
It's pretty much
so, which makes it a lie, right? It's not for anything. It's just for money.
Well, no, it is just for money, because I think
that's what I mean.
Fuel duty was always just a revenue earner. It was a huge revenue earner. It was always one of the biggest sort of single things that they needed to protect. It brought in a lot of cash, and when people are moving to electric vehicles, that works for a while, But eventually, when everybody has an electric car and they're not buying unleaded in vast
So that's what I'm
quantities-
saying, that tax then becomes a lie. It's just for the sake of raising money.
Well, yeah, I mean,
There's
that's
no
what it is.
benefit. There's no... What's she going to say?
No, but it's the same with income tax and all the other stuff. It's just taxing you as you go about your daily life. It's the same with in London. As of next year, you won't be able to get an exemption on the congestion charge with your electric car. So lots of people who have electric cars have previously been able to drive into London because it's better for the environment, etc. People have bought vans for their businesses that are electric, and they'll now have to pay more money. It's controversial because, as we've seen from Norway, if you give people lots of tax cuts to drive electric vehicles, they will start driving electric vehicles. But as we've also seen from Norway, you have to really manage your wealth. And they have, well, I can't remember how much it is. They've got millions per person because they
manage it properly.
But they manage the income from oil. So, you know, what's...
Yeah, we could.
Well, sort of. What's our crop at the moment? What do we do? What does Britain...
Nothing.
We're sort of just, I don't know. We've got...
If we got paid for moaning, we'd be a very rich
Europe's
nation.
unemployed uncle at the moment. It's a very peculiar vibe at the moment. But yeah, I look forward to the budget as much as you do, I think. It'll be
Yeah,
a
I think
fun
it's
night.
going to be a word I can't use. The Mirror. We told the kids everything, the good and the bad. This is a story about Will, Prince William talking about Princess Kate, told the children everything about the cancer battle.
Okay, that's good. A really weird front page for today.
Very strange.
And I'm pleased that the Mirror actually went with something. Maybe they just thought, I'm fed up with all this Trump BBC nonsense.
Maybe. So the FT again is Trump and the BBC.
I trust these guys, incidentally. Talking of
FT, they're the second most trusted after the BBC.
Are they?
Yeah.
According to whom? Is
According
it
to
just
some
me?
thing that I read.
Because I would agree with that. I think they
Here we
put
go.
out some good...
The BBC remains by miles the most watched, listened to and read of all platforms in the UK. It is the most trusted at 60%, with the FT at 57%.
Okay.
ITV and Channel 4 at 56%, followed by The Guardian at 51%, according to the Reuters Institute. Telegraph Trust stands at 42% and The Mail at 24%.
24% for the Mail.
Yeah.
What was the Telegraph at again?
Telegraph was 42.
So still a bit of still lagging behind.
Still
Reuters
lagging
also
behind.
pretty good.
So the BBC is the most trusted and the FT second most trusted. So the Metro, Trump's $1 billion battle with corrupt BBC.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Eye, future of the BBC licence fee in jeopardy as Trump threatens $1 billion legal action.
I don't
so I think we're
anybody's
getting sensing a trend.
I don't know if anybody's actually said that, you know, the future of the BBC licence fee. I feel as though that's kind of a hobby horse for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is it? Has anybody made that connection?
Well, I mean, no, not really.
I think it's, I don't know, that whole seam of conversation seems like a bit of a reach.
Yeah,
but
well, maybe they're going to have to do something radical with the licence, but maybe because of this, when the board meets again, they'll say no more licence.
When's the charter up for?
Charter's up in a
couple of years.
Charter up? Couple of years. It's not far away.
It's not far away, so they've got to really put their best effort in for the next couple of years.
Yeah. The Guardian again, BBC board member with Tory link, led the charge over claims of bias. I think this is Robbie Gibb, who I thought was a member of the that pop band.
No idea.
Robbie Gibb.
Robbie Gibb.
The Gibb brothers. What were they called?
Before my time, I think.
Yeah, the Bee Gees. Thank you.
Oh, really?
Yes. Hey, there was a Robbie Gibb in the Bee Gees, wasn't it? It's not the same guy.
No, not the same guy.
But, no, that's what I always think when I see his name. It's the Bee Gees.
I completely forgotten about
Robin. Oh, it was Robin Gibb. Oh, there you go.
So apart from the first name and the band.
It's pretty much there. Yeah, he was an ex-Tory Margaret Thatcher advisor, I think. So that's the story.
There's a very weird cavalcade of people who have done other things.
Yeah.
It's a very strange world.
It is a very strange world. Right, the Daily Mail, 24% trusted.
20, yeah.
Trump tells BBC, grovel or I'll sue you for $1 billion.
It's a bit Evil Millionaire. It's a bit Dr. Evil vibes, isn't it?
From Trump.
From Trump.
He loves to flex his.
It's sort of, but it kind of just sounds a bit stupid. And also, of all the people, somehow he still comes out of this pretty bad.
Well, and also, but it helps Trump, doesn't it? If people stop trusting news organisations like the BBC just at the point where he should be being held, truthfully being held to account. You know, not biased, not in a biased way, but he is the president and he should be held to account. Any president, all presidents should be.
Yeah.
Then that's a win for him in regards to you know, silencing a lot of media.
Silencing the critics.
Yeah.
But and I think that's exactly what we need to be sort of slightly mindful of. Obviously, you should hold the BBC to a very high standard, but I mean, you've also got to.
But I mean, Caroline Levitt has called them 100% fake news. So
yeah, that's kind of a badge of honour.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is the thing, you can't capitulate to it. But I don't know. I would love to have been a fly on the wall when that editorial decision was made, if it was an editorial decision rather than just some random
incompetence. As my brother said, it's incompetence.
It is incompetence, but it's also it's a structural incompetence because does it not reflect the fact that there's inexperienced people who are making these calls? Yeah. And it's exactly the kind of mistake that I would make.
Overseeing it.
I understand how it's exactly the kind of thing that I would just be like, oh, that's quite good. And thankfully, I don't do anything.
Thankfully, you're not in charge of
anything.
anything.
I do car reviews. It's fine. It's so far down the importance pile. But I can just imagine waking up thinking, oh no, I'm pretty sure
really
that was me.
Ed, you'll never get into trouble here. We love you.
Fabulous.
Ed Wyson, thank you. Phone-ins next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome to Talk and to Talk Back. This is your hour. This is the hour you get to call and have your say. It's a full hour given to you and your voices. There are no guests, there is nothing else, just you and me discussing the topic of the day. And I think the topic of the day today, or yesterday, today, has to be the future of the BBC. They really know how to turn a crisis into a catastrophe in that place. They really do. And this is of their own making. This is an issue that should never have happened. This is an absolute disgrace. It is an embarrassment to journalism. It is an embarrassment to those of us who work really hard to try and walk a particular line. I can have opinions on this station, and I do, and you know my opinions of Donald Trump. But that doesn't mean that I display a bias. It is called an opinion. The BBC is not meant to show opinion. It is only meant to show the news. This is a very different beast here. This is the home of conversation and the home of opinion and views. But even though I have my opinions on Trump, I would never stop the other point of view. And that's what Talk is about. We're allowed to have opinions. And if you don't agree with them, that's fine. I probably don't agree with everything that you say either. But the whole point is that we have an opinion and we discuss it. So although this is an opinion station, that we're not determined to be completely down the line, the BBC is. The BBC is supposed to deliver news in a way that is unbiased. It's not an opinion station. It is not a view-based organisation. It is about going straight down the line. And in the years that I worked at the BBC, no one ever told me that I had to have a particular point of view. That's why I don't believe it is institutional bias in the way that we've seen institutional bias in other organisations. I believe that there is bias there, but it is unintentional. It is through a lack of experience, it is through a lack of oversight, it's through some really poor management. But I don't believe it is institutional. I don't believe that somebody at the top is telling the journalists what to write, what to say, and what to do. That doesn't happen. And I know that from my own experience. The only requirement that I had while I was working at the BBC, you know, they with my paymasters, was not to have an opinion. That was when I was working at the BBC. That is not where I was working at LBC or here. Opinion is what we're about. But not at the BBC. I had to toe the line. That nobody told me that I had to do it this way or I had to do it that way. You just knew through editorial guidelines that you had to be unbiased about everything. So, that being said, what this programme did was disgraceful. It is not acceptable. And anywhere that I've been, I would never allow for two pieces of tape to be stitched together to prove a point. Ever. As a journalist, that would go against everything I believe. And luckily, it would go against everything that my team believes as well. It's not something we would ever do, ever. Of that, you can be certain. So what do you think about what the BBC has done to itself? Do you think that it can survive? Do you trust the BBC when it comes to news? Now, the thing I know about the BBC as well with the news, and sometimes it can be a bit slow. And the reason it's slow, it's because it is double or triple sourcing its information. So if there was, let's say, a big disaster in this country, if you want your news fast, I'd probably go to Sky or to a radio station because you're not bound by images. If you want it accurate, it'll be slow, but it will be accurate on the BBC. That's what I've always said. I think that's fair, right? News organisations like Sky actually are really getting good at the accuracy because of all the communication changes that there have been. So I might go between the two now. But that was always the case, that you could trust that when the BBC says something, they've triple sourced it. It might be 5 minutes behind other organisations, but that's why. But do you still trust them? Would you still rely on them if there was a big breaking story? Where would you go now for your news? Do you still trust the BBC? What should happen next, do you think? The Charter is in 2027. That's the next Charter meeting where they decide the future of the way the BBC is paid. It's one of the big decisions that they have to make. Is it time for the TV licence to go? I personally think there's a lot wrong with the TV licence. I do pay for mine because I use the BBC, and I think that's only fair. I could probably get away with not paying it, but I do use it. So that's fair. Although 180 quid I think is a lot to pay in one go. I pay it in one go. Do you still use the BBC? Do you still pay for a TV? I think it's wrong, by the way. I think it's entirely wrong that you have to pay if you're watching live sport on ITV, for example. That's wrong. It should only be if you're watching live stuff on the BBC. So there's a lot wrong with the licence, and I think it'll have to change. I think it has to change. But do you still support the BBC, or are you one of those people saying, no, it's time to scrap the whole thing? It's got to go. Time to get rid of the BBC. Donald Trump is now suing the BBC for $1 billion if they don't apologise by Friday. There's 3 things he wants. He wants an apology, a retraction, and money. £1 billion, $1 billion, 760 odd million pounds would cripple the BBC. Is it time for it to go? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Well, the BBC chair, Samir Shah, was on Sky News yesterday on the mistakes that were made with the Trump documentary. Have a listen to what he said.
The apologising is for the way the team edited President Trump's speech to his supporters on January the 6th.
It was a mistake, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
A mistake. I don't think it was a mistake as such. Somebody deliberately put those 2 pieces of his speech together, deliberately. But I don't think it was maliciously. Well, maybe it was. But what I'm saying is that was inexperience. That's not institutional bias. Nobody told them to do that. How it slipped through, I have no idea. That is crazy that so many managers in that place and that still managed to go out. And the fact that it happened was disgusting. It was done by an external company. It wasn't done in-house. It was done by a company called October Films. So heads should roll there. Like in the same way with MasterChef, remember that? Like Greg Wallace saying that was an external company as well. But doesn't look good, does it? Whoever did it, whoever passed it off and said, yeah, that'll do, there wasn't enough oversight to make sure that they didn't go out. 0344 499 1000. They are certainly guilty of incompetence, of stupidity, of neglect of their news organisation, and editorial utter incompetence. Ridiculous. And that's not what we expect from the BBC. John is in West Lothian. Hello, John.
Good evening.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Sorry.
What do you think about this latest self-punch in the face by the BBC?
Well, first of all, I think the whole thing could have been avoided if they had taken the action that they should have taken at the very beginning, which any senior managerial organisation would do, was the people that caused it, that they would have been disciplined or fired or whatever. To me, the BBC is prepared to cover up everything, and I understand everything you've done to try and defend them in certain areas. I think they are biased. I think that the whole organisation is unfit for purpose. I think that the whole licensing fee thing, because it's not a fee, it's a tax. If you don't pay it, you're in trouble. And why should you have to pay the BBC fee to watch other channels?
I agree. That's entirely wrong. Yeah.
It's out of sequence these days. With everything that's going on, the BBC has not kept pace with what's happened in the media.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think that the idea that you have to pay a licence fee to watch another channel live output is entirely wrong. With the bias question,
yes.
Do you think it's institutionally biased? And by that I mean that somebody at the top is telling journalists what to write and what to say, or do you think it's biased because of the way they recruit people of the same type? That it's groupthink, if you like.
Yeah, no, I think it's an institutional thing. Is that they're only employing people that believe in what they say. I'm not saying that the Director General or anything else is personally responsible for these things, but it's the people that's employing them. It's the people that's running it.
Well, they're employing in their own image, aren't they?
Yes,
yeah.
and the people that did the Paramount, the program with the Donald Trump thing, they are personally responsible for it. And the BBC can't say it was an outside organisation. They are responsible for what they put out on their channel. Therefore, they.
I completely agree.
That.
Yeah. I mean, it was an external organisation, but they should sever all ties with that organisation, and it's up to that organisation whether they fire people, because the BBC won't directly be able to fire them. But you're right that the BBC was entirely responsible for that situation.
Yeah, and I don't blame Donald Trump for trying to get some money out of them. But I think it's more than that. I think the fact that they did that during a presidential election was trying to influence the decision, and that to me is totally wrong. If that was to happen in this country, it would be totally unacceptable. You have to. It is a world service, the BBC, and in years gone by, it was absolutely fantastic, and I would be the first to support what it used to stand for. But I'm afraid today it is not what it's doing good for this country. It's not doing the reputation any good, and we actually have to say enough is enough, and actually fundamentally look at the whole setup of the BBC.
How would you change it?
I would say that the normal commercial programmes are fine. You know, they can do what they like. That should be on subscription. I would say that like the World Service, if it's going to be the World Service that it used to be, which was supported by the government, you know, the Foreign Office or whatever,
yeah.
then that should stay. But it has to be controlled. It has to be maintained to the standards that we would expect, and not be biased. Not put individual. You know, programs like talkTV. I understand that if individuals come on and they're running the program, you know, their opinions are, you know, important and you know, can be forward, but they're encouraging the public to vote, you know, to phone in and disagree with them if necessary. The BBC doesn't do that, and certainly on the World Service, that's not an opportunity that people have. So that if you're in anywhere part of the world, which used, you know, and the BBC was respected in lots and lots of ways, that they have.
But you know, they used to have a phone in. World Have Your Say. I presented it a few times.
Oh, right. Okay. I will give in to your superior knowledge on
Yeah,
this.
I mean, they cancelled it. But it was a great programme, 32 million listeners. So that was a bit scary. But yeah, they would do there was a global phone-in, which was incredible, if you imagine the logistics of that. But yeah, I agree with you. And I think that, you know, places like Talk or LBC or any of the competitors here, we are upfront about what it is that the offering is, right? So this is opinion. My opinion will differ wildly from, let's say, Julia Hartley-Brewer or from Kevin O'Sullivan, but they are opinions. And we always say, these are opinions, but you're welcome to disagree. But that's what we're selling. The BBC is meant to just give you facts and the truth. And if it can't be trusted to do that, then they are in a world of pain.
Well, on that basis, Petrie, they're not fit for purpose. You know, I mean, I like, you know, your colleague, Mr. Cardwell, who says it's okay to disagree, but you have to be disagreeable. And that's the whole purpose of these sort of channels and the opportunity for the public to actually give a genuine view that may be different from what the station or whatever is doing. But the BBC was set up on a totally different format.
Yeah.
And now that has been taken away, and the Director Generals over the last few years have not stood up to the standards that was expected of what the public expected. And at the end of the day, the difference between talkTV and all the other channels that are there is that they're not relying on public funding, because it's not a fee, as I said. It's a tax. Because if you don't do it, you can be in serious trouble.
Yeah, that's got to change. I think the days of that kind of licence fee have gone. I think they'll have to do some kind of subscription model. They'll have to do... I can't see the licence fee surviving. I just can't, not after this.
But I don't think this government will do it. And, you know, we could go on to many other subjects that this government doesn't do.
Yeah.
But, but you know, this is you know, something that is very, very important, because the vast majority of the people watch television. The older people, anyway, like myself, who are in the God knows dot age. The younger people may not. They listen to all sorts of other things. But also that new format of information is equally dangerous if they get it wrong.
I agree. I really do. And I think that the BBC has really damaged. This is hugely damaging in terms of what the BBC always wants to maintain, and that is the trust in the veracity of what they're saying. And when they say it, you believe 100% what they're saying. And that is the most important thing about the BBC. And it's got to be straight down the line. It's got to be... You know, the offering has just got to be factual. It's just got to be true, because otherwise their whole reason for existing, it just melts away. John, great to talk to you. You've got a lovely voice, by the way. Lovely voice. I've got to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning, and this is your chance to talk back, and all opinions are welcome. We're talking about the BBC and whether you think it has a future or not, because the one thing, I keep saying it, but it's about trusting them. It's about knowing that what you see and what you hear is fact. It's true. There is no bias. Now, do I think the BBC can be biased? Yes, I do. But I don't believe it is institutional in the regard that it comes down from the top. I've never known a journalist being told what to think or what to say. I certainly was never instructed at the BBC. I just knew that I had to be unbiased. I wasn't there as an opinion presenter. So I do believe there's bias, but I believe there's bias because of the way the BBC recruits and the way that the entry requirements, if you like, to even the most basic beginner's job in journalism is a degree. And I think that is far too narrow. I think it's far, far too narrow, because luckily I was dragged up in the days where you didn't need a degree to become a broadcaster and to become a journalist. And I think I've done okay, right? I learnt the skills. I made sure that I'm up on the law. I make sure that I'm up on everything. And if I'm paid to have an opinion, I'll have an opinion. If I'm paid to not have an opinion, guess what? I won't have one. I'm just cheap like that. But I believe there is bias because of the kind of people. There's group think. The people that are perhaps working in the newsrooms are all very similar, and they might not check on each other. They might not double check to make sure that they're being biased or not. One of the producers on Newsnight, who's a very good friend of mine, yes, she has a degree, she's a lawyer, but she also had a very different life and a very different upbringing to everybody she worked with on Newsnight. And she would often be unpopular by saying, are you sure you want to do it that way? Because this is sounding like bias. This is sounding like a bit too... And she's going to be on the show soon. Guess who she is. So she was often the person who would check their thinking, because she wasn't like everybody else who worked on that programme. But if you haven't got a person like that, then you all just get sucked into that vortex of just saying, of not checking each other, because you all think the same, because group think. That's where the bias comes from. It doesn't come from senior management instructing its journalists to behave or to think or to write in a certain way. In my experience. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Do you still trust the BBC? Do you still pay your TV licence? And do you think it can survive? Kevin is on the line now from Leicestershire. Hello, Kevin. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Grace. And of course,
Thank you.
I do hope you're well.
Very well, thank you, yeah.
I'm going to start with your opening question that you asked at the very start of the show, if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay, you asked where would I go to if there was an earthquake? What news station? I'm not joking. I'm not just saying this because I'm on the phone to you, but I'd turn Talk on.
Would you? Good.
Yeah. Because I believe Talk. I mean, lefties might say, oh, it's a right-wing, far-right station or whatever, but I don't know. I make my own judgments from it, and the information.
I think with the news,
more common sense.
Yeah, with the news, if there was a breaking story, I would say that we'd be on it. You could trust that. It's when opinion comes in that people will either agree or disagree. It doesn't, but opinion isn't fact, right? So that on an opinion station, sometimes people can view opinion as fact. And opinion is just opinion, and we're all entitled to it. Okay, we've all got different opinions on different things. But with fact, we would never lie to you. We would never give you something factually untrue, I don't believe.
No, I believe that as well. But I think you do a bit more than what normal news people will do, because you'll have your bulletin if something happens live, but then you will change your programme to suit it. I mean, a lot of what's happened today, I mean, I've listened a lot today, and as the stories come on, like the Donald Trump part only came out around Peter Cardwell's show. I think it was a bit around that time, the letter. So the story was developing throughout the day. Yeah. And you were continually talking about it, as well as putting bulletins in, but there was, as more information comes out, it gets brought in and it gets discussed. So if I'd missed whatever this was by a few minutes, you might miss a BBC bulletin. So I don't want to over-elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Because they don't... Well, there is a rolling news channel, isn't there? Is there still a rolling... Yeah, BBC do a rolling news channel. But yeah, I would probably turn to the radio as well.
Yeah.
Because we can update things as they happen, right? Do you think the BBC should carry on, or does it need to...
I'm going to sound hypocritical. Here. Yes, I do. I do, and I don't pay my TV licence, so that's going to sound hypocritical. I don't believe it should carry on. I agree with a lot of what your other callers and your guests have said. By the way, it was lovely seeing you and your brother. Both of you were very professional. I would never have knew you were brother and sister, because you were both very professional and you just answered questions like normal people. So very, very, I really enjoyed that part.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It was really weird, because in all the years we've known each other, we've never been in a studio together. So it's very interesting for me. But yeah, I mean, he's just got that 30 years of experience that I just thought was unique.
Yeah, it's useful, because he will have seen the changes over the years. And I do believe the institution should carry on. But I don't believe it should carry on as it is. I mean, it's probably required some kind of modern shake-up for quite some time. I mean, it is wrong,
I agree,
in my opinion, taking 180 quid off people who are struggling, you know, who probably don't even watch the BBC. Most of the younger generation don't.
Well, they've got to change it for that reason, haven't they? I mean, to be honest with you, because I don't know anybody under the age of 30 who watches or absorbs news the way that you and I probably do or have done. It's all YouTube. It's all, you know.
At the same time, YouTube. It is, though. You're right.
It is. They don't watch anything on telly. You know, and news they'll get from, I don't know, some online thing or other. And they don't watch programmes like we watch programmes. They'll download it, or they'll, you know. So BBC's got to change because of that, because the world is changing.
Yeah, but I think they should split it. I mean, the thing is, the BBC lost my trust in 2016, and I've not paid my TV licence since then.
Oh, what was
I've been having some renovations, let's just say, going on. But it was Brexit, you know, and since then, when you start seeing things like Newsnight, and you just see how biased, and I know, and like I said, I did listen to the interviews you've had, and I know some people say that it's only in certain sections. But whether it's intentional or not intentional, when you've got a panel and there's 4 lefties on there and a right-winger and a crowd just full of lefties, and the right-winger never even gets to finish his point, he's constantly interrupted, whereas shut down, it is, I can't watch that. So therefore,
and yet the BBC recently, Kevin, got into trouble for having too many Reform guests on. They got into trouble editorially for that because they represent only 0.7% of politicians, and yet they were giving, it was Ed Davey that raised it, and said the BBC was giving a disproportionate amount of time to reform.
I think I heard something about that earlier. Now you said it today, funnily enough. Yeah. But I think the reason for that, in fairness, is they're leading in the polls by quite a long way, and they have done for a long time. So I suppose that they're trying to balance the demographic out a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to point out is that a lot of people will say, "Oh, they're too lefty," and then other people will say they're too right wing, and some people say they're too pro-Israel, and other people will say they're anti-Israel.
Well, I've never seen any. Definitely not too pro-Israel. Definitely never in a million years. I know you're being.
Well, no, I'm not. There's loads of reporting about how they had so many Israeli guests on, because it's obviously it's easier to film on the Israel side of the conflict and to get more guests. It's very difficult to get Hamas, for example, to talk. So, but they were accused of having way too many Israeli guests on. And this is what I'm saying, is that if you look at the amount of complaints that go into the BBC and the sort of complaints that are made, it's really interesting to see that you'll get almost, not equal, but you'll get people complaining about too many Israeli guests and other people going they're too biased towards Palestinians. So, yeah, if you look at some of the numbers on that, it is interesting. And I think that often people hear what they want to hear and they see what they want to see, and I suppose it depends from which point of view you're watching something or listening to something, right?
Well, I get that. Okay, I until you said it, I would never, because I've never seen anything pro-Israel really on the BBC. But I mean, I'm not a massive consumer of the BBC. Yeah. Maybe there has been out there.
A lot of people complained they had way too many Israeli guests on, way too much pro-Israel, because obviously by the nature of a war, they couldn't go into Palestine. They weren't allowed to interview other people with a different point of view. So they've been accused of those sorts of biases. I'm really not defending the BBC. I'm really not. I think they have absolutely behaved shockingly in this regard, and I think it's disgusting. It goes against everything I believe in as a journalist. But I'm just trying to be fair.
You're trying to be very diplomatic, and you're doing a good job of it.
I'm just trying to be fair.
I never actually was aware of, but you know.
Well, you see, that's the whole point of a conversation. You're doing a good job of it.
I mean, like I say, it wasn't just that. I mean, it stemmed, as I say, if I refer back to my point of view, it refers back to 2016, and it was definitely pro-Remain.
I'm not going to argue with that. I agree with you on that. I agree 100%.
You know, it was hard, and I've not paid it since then. But, and this is the thing, if the BBC split, right, I don't mean split, but if part of it was subscription-based, a bit like yourself, or using adverts, because they've got God knows how many adverts then you advertise in their bleeding programmes, you know, so might as well do it. It wouldn't change things much. You might get a younger demographic people interested if they then push it online as well, which I know they do some of that. But the news section, I would separate, but it would have to be completely impartial, like I used to believe it would. And here's the thing, Petrie, if that was the case, and they reduced the licence fee to something like 50 quid a year, which I know is only about a third or less than a third of what it is now, but that's still going to rake them in about $2 billion a year. They've got a lot of deadwood in there, or they could still make the rest of what they're losing in advertising, because that would deal for their programs, as long as they got their reputation back. But as things stand, they've definitely got to do something. It wasn't a mistake. It's a bit like looking at it from, I don't know, a woman's point of view. If a man's been unfaithful, you'll lose trust in him if he's ever out late, or if he's hit her. You know, you'll lose.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think once trust is broken, it's incredibly difficult to get it back. And I think that's where the BBC find themselves. Kevin, it's lovely to talk to you, but I've got to go because I'm running out of time and I've got to take a break. I'll be back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, sorry, I was just talking to my producer then. I was using Talkback, which is what I hope you're going to be using by calling me, because this is your chance to talk back. So, give me a call. 0344 499 1000. We are talking about the BBC and where do you get your news from? Who do you trust? If there were to be a big story on like war breaking out, okay, where would you go? Who would you tune into to hear what you believe is to be the truth, the facts, so you absolutely know what's going on? Where would you go for that information? Give me a call or send me a message. The number 0344 499 1000, and you can text, you put the word talk and then your message to 87222. Who do you trust, and will you ever trust the BBC again? Let's go to the phones. And Den is in London. Hello, Den. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning, Petrie.
So, what do you think about what the BBC has done? Do you still trust them?
I'll be honest, listening to your last caller, I'm in the category of the younger generation. I'm 25 years old.
You are? You're but a boy.
Sorry?
You're but a boy.
Yes.
25.
Just about.
Even my son is older than you. That's how young you are.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Den. Where do you get your news from?
You.
Oh. Excellent.
I listen to Talk daily. I've spoken to Peter Cardwell once or twice, I believe it was. I only trust Talk TV or Talk altogether. I don't get my news from anywhere else because I don't trust it. It's all left wing or it's all just one sided, in my opinion.
But do you not think that Talk is also one sided? But it just happens to be the side that you agree with.
No.
Okay.
So it's like I said to your producer on the phone. I think Trump's all in the right for what he's doing. He's done it to CNN, I believe it was. It's true. Like the BBC was proven. It was like 44 to 54 minutes, that cut between the speeches. Yeah.
Oh, there was a big gap. I mean, what they did editorially was disgusting, and nobody I know has got any time for that sort of behaviour. Right? It brings us all into shame. That sort of behaviour. It was absolutely wrong of them to have done that.
For me, it's just how many chances do they get? They've done it with the Palestinian panorama. They've done it with this one. Like, how many more? And they've done it with many more.
Oh, yeah, they had the son of a Hamas leader doing the voiceover.
They had the son of a Hamas leader talking over the panorama.
That was disgusting as well.
So how many more times can we trust them? And I don't agree with the licence fee. I don't agree with none of that. Like,
do you use the BBC at all? Do you listen to Radio 1 or
unless I'm watching sport?
People? Right.
If I'm watching sport, then I'll watch it. But apart from that, not really. I don't believe in the news that they share because it's all left wing. I don't believe in any of that. I only use it pretty much for sport.
And you don't think that you should pay for that?
I believe I should pay for, like, the subscription. If I'm going to pay for it, like they do it on Now TV.
Yeah.
If you want to watch it, you can pay for a subscription for a certain amount of time, and once that subscription's up, you end it. That's it. But I don't believe, like, I bought my first house, I say about a year ago. Within the first 4 weeks of me moving here, I got a letter from them.
And then they're really threatening. They're really nasty, actually.
Well, they turned up at my door and I basically told them to do one.
Good.
So, and they went, "We've got to come in." I went, "You're not coming in.
They're not allowed to go in.
We want to make sure that your license." I said, I said, "I'm not paying for your license." I said, £180 a year is ridiculous. All these other countries laugh at us. You go to America, they laugh at us because we have a national broadcast station that we have to pay for.
Mm.
They go, "Ain't your TV free?"
Well, America does. They have the PBS, don't they? And I think Trump's just recently cut funding to the public broadcasting service in America. So they do have one that is funded by government,
but
not by license fee, but by taxation.
It's optional.
Yeah, but it's paid for by taxation, basically, rather than by a license fee. And I think the license fee has definitely had its day. Not just because of the unfairness of it, but because young people like you do not absorb your news or your television the same way as us old fogies do. So you don't. So it's a dying thing anyway, because I don't think young people will have to buy a licence in the future.
So, for example, I go to my nan and granddad's. They pay for the licence fee because I'm not going to lie, they watch the BBC, but they only watch it for like EastEnders or stuff like that.
Mm.
And sometimes the news is on, and all I hear is just left-wing garbage all the time. That's all I hear. Every single time you hear about reform or the Conservatives, it's very short and brief. The rest of it's all Labour.
Well, the Labour are in government, and they are messing up, and they are muffing everything up, aren't they? So they do provide many hours of joy in terms of news.
I don't want to get you taken off by Ofcom, but I can promise you now.
Don't swear.
No, I'm not going to swear. But Labour, it's true with what that veteran said the other day.
Yeah. Well, I think that Labour have a lot to answer for at the moment, and this budget is going to make them even more unpopular. So I hope you phone in on Budget Day, Den. Have a chat with me about what they've done.
I hope so myself, but all I can see is just we're becoming a third world country very, very quickly, in my opinion.
Well, it'll just be a few people paying tax for the whole country soon, won't it?
I feel sorry for my son.
How old's your boy?
So I've got a 10-month-old boy.
Oh, what have you called him?
His name's Tristan.
Tristan, nice name.
Yeah,
I like that.
But I truly feel sorry for him.
Yeah, I feel sorry for my son, and he's older than you are. You know, I feel sorry for you. You know, you're never going to see a pension. You're never going to, you know, all the things you're paying towards.
All I do, Petrie, honestly, I know this has gone off topic, but all I do is work, and all I do is just pay taxes. Yeah,
we all feel the same way, Den. We all feel the same way. It is heartbreaking.
I'm one of those. In my generation's kind of lost work ethic.
I don't blame you.
But I work 6 or 7 days a week, and it's just not worth it anymore. I'm actually discussing with my wife whether we should move out of England. That's
such a shame, isn't it?
So
I don't blame young people for not wanting to work either. What's the point? As you've just said, just tax and tax and tax.
That's all it is.
It's lovely to meet you.
You too. Thank you very much.
Well, listen, call again, won't you? Good to speak to you. I've got to go for another break, but I will be back in just a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning. It is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And just to let you know, there's a new thing, and it's a podcast of this programme, sort of condensed version. So if you missed the first hour, then by the end of the show, the podcast is out. So why don't you have a listen? Go on, click on it. Just get me a few clicks on it. That would be lovely. So if by the end of the show, it will be available. Where do we get it from? Our web, all podcast providers. There you go. Apple, blah blah, all of them. It's there. It will be there by the end of the show anyway. Sam's been working very hard. So there you go. That's a new thing. It's a new podcast of this show. So please check it out. And also, something else I've got to tell you is don't forget, from Monday, the 1st of December, our talkTV app will be closed. It will just disappear, or it just won't work. So make sure you download the Talk app, wherever you get your apps from, and then that will just take over. That would just immediately be the place that you go. So it's the Talk app. There's an image of it on the screen there if you're watching. So no more Talk TV, but Talk. So just make sure you've got that. Right, let's get back to your phones. Your calls. We're talking about the BBC and whether you still trust it or not. Ty has phoned from Worcestershire. Hello, Ty. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, Petrie?
It's good to speak to you again. I'm glad you called. What do you think of this Panorama edit?
It was a 50-minute video, effectively. So the editing was awful.
It was just badly done.
Just had a way of getting over to our other listeners who want to trust in the BBC, like any Panorama thing with John Sweeney, with Panodrama, with Tommy Robinson. If you want to go there, it's up to you. But I'm just, the BBC has been very complicit in very much of their things. But also, they make £5.4 billion off the licence fee. So, that's what is it, 154 or 155 pound a year.
It's more than that now. It's going up to 180 pounds a year.
Oh wow! So let's go from 5.4 billion. So let's add 30 pound then. Where do we end up there? About what, £7.5 billion?
They certainly do get a heck of a lot of money, and they will insist on paying some people an awful lot. Most of them managers, but yeah, I think that the sort of thing that happens with those, it seems to be Panorama programmes, that there should be better oversight to that, right? I mean, they can afford it, but they keep putting these programmes out to tender to different organisations, so it's not even done in-house.
Petrie, you've worked for this company, you know what goes on.
Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't impressed. I kept away from the BBC because my dad was a BBC man and my brother was a BBC man, and I didn't want to.
My family still work for the BBC, so.
Oh, really? I didn't want to be another Hosken at the BBC, right? I just thought that's too many Hoskins in one organisation, and also I didn't ever want to be accused of nepotism. I wanted to stand on my own feet. So It wasn't until after my father died that I then went and worked at the BBC World Service and then went to work for BBC London. But I wasn't going to go anywhere near the organisation while my dad was still alive. That was just not an option for me.
So when you were working for BBC World, you had like 34 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that? They were the biggest
audience on World Have Your Say. In the world. It was the world. 32 to 34 million listeners I had one show.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but I'm with you all the way there.
That is gobsmacking, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Very profound. You've just killed half of the you know, CNBC gets like 700,000.
Yeah, whatevs.
In one go.
Yeah, nobody in this organisation's ever had so many listeners in one show.
Sorry, I just went off there. So, seeing it on a profound level, you know.
So you work in the business as well, Ty, do you?
Yeah, so my family's company, we've got sound equipment, videos, drone operators.
Oh, wow, camera drones.
Yeah, but we do lots of video, insurance companies and promotional video. Just like anyone who's got a camera now on their phone can do everything that we're doing now. You know, the whole BBC, all these audit videos out there now that people are just filming off their phone. So going to all these marches, I don't like to call them protests because protest just gives a negative thing. I like to call them freedom marches. I just think that has a better. I'm not going on these marches every week to cause some right-wing supremacist things. I'm just there to
have your voice heard, and that's everybody's right in this country. That's your right to do that, it is a march. Protest always it seems to me to be rather more aggressive. I think that's
it does, yeah.
Yeah, I always think of it as a much more aggressive thing.
I'm just on freedom marches. You know, I was there on Saturday in Birmingham for the digital ID. You know, I was
Good
stood there.
For you.
Yeah, well,
that is a. Oh, don't start me on digital ID, Ty.
Don't do that another day.
We'll definitely do that another day.
But
oh, my God.
In Birmingham, in Chamberlain Square on Saturday, you know, with my digital ID jacket on, and I was singing my songs like I do, you know, and, you know, it's like the next time we're back there is the 20th of December. So, but they asked me to come back, but this platform that we're on, like your talkTV is a platform. Same as me doing Tommy Robinson when I was down in London, you know, 3-4 weeks ago. I didn't use that platform for his agenda. I used it for my own because it was that big. Same as talkTV. People listen to you because it has a profound effect on it's more free speech than we'll ever have. And that's where...
That's why phone-ins for me are so important. I've always done phone-ins throughout my broadcasting career, and they are absolutely vital. And you know what? They keep you grounded as well.
I watched those for years as well, Petrie. You know, when you were doing your world services and doing all those things, people don't realise where you were, but you were also ostracised when you worked at the BBC.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an odd place.